Welcome to September's presentation of the Urban Design Panel. My name is David McElnay, and I am currently serving on the Executive Committee of the Urban Design Panel, and I will be introducing our excellent presentation today on the Albina neighborhood. The Urban Design Panel is sponsored jointly by the American Institute of Architects, the American Planning Association, and the American Society of Landscape Architects, and is composed of professionals from those three organizations with a shared interest in urban design. So it's kind of unique in this professional association. We are joined today by Adrian Morris from the AIA Oregon. The AIA has previously hosted this event at the Center for Architecture in Portland and now generously hosts the Urban Design Panel as a monthly Zoom meeting until further notice. In addition to the monthly email announcement that goes out, our panel presentations can be found on the AIA Oregon event calendar, and as well as the weekly Thursdays at 3 newsletter that comes out of AIA Oregon will be announced a week or more ahead of the monthly presentations. So participation in any of these events makes you a panel member. Welcome. We encourage you to sign up for information about future presentations. When you register for any of these UDP presentations, you will be included in the upcoming invitations. We also encourage you to send any interesting future panel presentation ideas to Adrian Morris at AIA Oregon. And please, if you could, mute all of your microphones right this moment. Adrian, I'm sure we'll put that in the chat box for that email contact. These presentations are recorded and are made available by the AIA as a Vimeo file, which can be found in the link provided in the chat box as soon as it can be formatted and set up and placed in archive. Lost my text there. So this presentation will be approximately 30 minutes and will be followed by Q&A. If it's a little longer, it is what it is. We certainly can get your questions via the chat box. So Brian Sturr, also on the executive committee, will be helping, and Bob Boylo, also on the executive committee, are here today to help kind of curate that chat box and pull up the questions after the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Zari Santer, who is the founding board member for Albina Vision. Is that correct?
Albina Vision Trust.
Albina Vision Trust. Thank you very much. Sorry, please take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to see such enthusiasm for this very, very important project. Some of you may know that this group, I have been before your committee at least 2, if not 3 times in the past 3 or 4 years. We came to you first when a group of non-affiliated citizens came together and we hired, and that's a misnomer because we got a lot of non-paid hours from the talented firm of Henneberry Eddy, who work with us to develop a vision, set of values for development of an area that was a vibrant, diverse community prior to urban renewal era. And so as a result of that work, we generated a lot of community excitement and were able to secure grants from Metro, City of Portland, Meyer Memorial Trust, to really take this idea of the values and vision further out and to engage the community as a whole, but specifically the African-American community who were basically marginalized and removed from that area, to engage with us, to understand what are the development components that need to be part of this vision in order to create an inclusive, diverse, and most importantly, affordable community. And after we secured the grant, we hired another talented multidisciplinary firm led by Eldorado, and Sean is here. And the intent was, first of all, to confirm our assumptions in terms of the values and what this area should be. And most importantly, to establish the components of these development that would help us achieve an affordable, inclusive, and diverse community, and also bring it to a more sort of ground level in terms of practicality of development. So, and along the way also, as you all are aware, we have been watching and working and sometimes being a little bit combative with Oregon Department of Transportation regarding their project, because we felt that the work that they're doing in the Rose Quarter area would have significant impact on the future development in this area. And we came to you once before, and specifically on that issue, and we really appreciated your help and support when the environmental assessment came out for that project. So I just want to say how grateful we are for your support all along on this project. So now we are here to share what we did in the past year. And interestingly enough, we got the grant, we hired the consultant, and COVID hit. And all of our work in the past year and a half has been through this medium, Zoom. And as you can see today, with the level of participation in this meeting, we had the same success. We were able to generate enormous interest and participation in various processes that we went through. So we have our team, some members of our team. We have Winter Johannes, the executive director of Albina Vision Trust, and I'm going to pass it on to her, and maybe she will introduce the rest of their team. And we are very excited to be here. I want to hear from you your comments, your suggestions, and hopefully your encouragements. Thank you.
Thank you, Zeri. So, you know, the charge for this team was really to help us take the vision from framework down to a greater level of detail. And what we asked them to do is to show us what it looks like for Black Lives Matter to be reflected in design, in process, and in outcomes. So we're really excited to share this work this afternoon. And with that, I will introduce Josh Shelton at Eldorado and Sean Slattery, who will walk us through the presentation. Josh?
Thanks, Winter. And it's a pleasure to be here to share the work. We have a lot of work, so and a lot of the work has actually been created in collaboration with and really kind of pushed along by our team, which includes Cleo Davis and Kayin Talton Davis, two very talented artists that have worn lots of hats on this project, and they'll be leading us off. So what I'd like to do is just go ahead and turn this over to Cleo and Kayin, and then you'll notice that other members of our team will jump in throughout the presentation to continue to share. So Cleo and Kayin, if you can take it away, that'd be great.
All right. Thank you, Josh. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kayin Talton Davis. And as mentioned, I am one of the artists and designers on the design team.
And I'm Cleo Davis. I'm also one of the artists and designers on the design team.
Okay, and I think we'll take a quick moment to run through other members of the design team here. You just met Josh. I will pass it to Mark, just introduce himself as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Norman with Ideas in Action, and I'm part of the Housing and Economic Development, Income Generation and Wealth Building portion of the team. Maybe I can pass it to Brie.
Hi, everyone. Brie Hensold with Agency Landscape and Planning. I'm joined also by my colleagues C. Yang and Kymberly Ware on the phone today. And we're working and thinking mostly about the public realm. And I will pass it to, who else is here? Sean.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Slattery. I'm a project manager with Eldorado Architects and have had the good pleasure of working with this team in this wonderful aspirational project over the past year and plus. And I'm just looking forward to sharing with you today. The rest of the team that you see pictured on the screen were not available to join us today, but we also have on the team, you see there, Mike Wilkerson, who works with Echo Northwest there in Portland, who's also on the economic side of the team, and Othello Meadows, who is with the Meadows Group and was participating, focused on the community connections aspect of the project.
All right, thank you, Sean.
One thing I wanted to just alert the team to, we have 30 minutes, so we have a lot of content, so we'll need to move quickly through that. So a light touch today, just to make sure we share all the content. Sorry, Kayin, just wanted to give a time check real quick. Yeah.
All right, well, let's jump into it. What we aim to accomplish today, taking a look at this process and what we've been doing over the last year, how we've accomplished these things through community connections, what the plan is for wealth building, the overall plan, some conversation about governance, and following with a general conversation with everybody. Again, ways you can share dialogue, we're taking notes, chat, or you can send notes, images, etc. to Sean at eldo.us. Okay, so let's jump into it, the process. So many of you are probably fairly familiar with the typical process of working towards a scenario for development. AVTs has been a little bit different. What we've been doing is really establishing project values and programming goals with the community stakeholders first and foremost. And so starting from that point, we move into considering tools and neighborhood possibilities, then governance structures, and evaluating wealth building strategies for varying neighborhood possibilities. So all of these things that we're going to be going over were things that were developed out of those very important conversations with our community stakeholders. As you can see, this is an overview of the roadmap that we've been working through this last 18 months or so. We have a series of joy initiatives, which were moments where we were able to really celebrate with the community, the history, the heritage, possibilities for the future. And those were also connected to community dialogues, which were a mixture of surveys, general conversations, just being out and about in actual community as much as you can on Zoom, but having those conversations, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes even in other event spaces that lent themselves to having those conversations. And then in the orange, you see our workshops, which we split into 3 different sessions, 6 workshops, 3 sessions each. And you'll see some details in just a moment on what we kind of covered in each one of those workshops. Okay, community connections. So again, the Joy initiatives, we've had 4 so far. The first was essentially a virtual concert and interview where we talked with some longtime members of the Albina community and some newer members, and really getting to know and understand their history within Albina, and then what their vision was for the future. Hustle Highlights was a series of posts followed by a networking event with Black micro business owners. And it was a really good conversation for people to be able to make the connections that they needed to make right before things like Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So it was highly beneficial to have that conversation. Our third joint initiative was community care. We partnered with the Equitable Giving Circle by donating journals featuring some of the artwork from our workshops that went into their fundraising boxes with other Black-owned businesses and helped them to fundraise to feed their 500 plus families that they work with on a regular basis. And then our fourth joint initiative was this summer, and it was a film fest, a Juneteenth film fest, which was, again, highly celebrated and very well attended. Okay, our workshops, again, 6 workshops, starting out with the orientation, followed by programming review, scenario development feedback, and then scenario development review. And what you'll notice from that is that each of these workshops had a follow-up session. So in this, one of the things that we did was have a continual feedback loop. Within those 3 sessions that I mentioned before, our first session on Thursday nights was with the Black community. Saturday mornings tended to be geared more towards family time, with youth attending on a regular basis. And then Mondays was during the business day, so it was more towards planners and those who work within the city and other related areas. And so as you'll see throughout the rest of this, presentation, we'll have these little light bulb moments. And what those do is really kind of draw attention to insights that we had along the way. So our first one was don't draw too soon, which, as you see, we started really getting into drawing and designing after that 4th workshop, after we'd gotten to know our community insight fairly well and really developed those values with the community. These are some examples of the feedback that we've gotten from workshops. So you see some drawings, you see some notes. We used Miro at one point to interact with people, and different things work for different people. So again, back to those emails, those notes, those phone calls, those sketch pads, those holding things up to the screen to really see what was working for people and what didn't. So 18 community workshop sessions over the course of 45 hours, 563 attendees, 349 of those were unique individuals, and over 283 Black participants, which is something that we are very excited to see. So often Black participants and Black community members are not available to have and essentially excluded from being able to attend workshops like these in the planning of their own communities. 163 pieces of visual input from community and 20,000 plus words of design notes and community feedback, which you'll see reflected in the next few slides. These are our community hosts. So again, we really dove in and wanted to make sure that the community was a true stakeholder in this process. And so we reached out and spoke with many people and got them involved in the process through not only the workshops, but also the joint initiatives and other parts of our programming as well. And this is where I will turn it over for the wealth building.
Thank you. This looked very different than a regular process. And we did that deliberately to think about not just affordable housing and who gets it, but how people actually have a say, how people generate wealth, how really income can be generated, passive, active, meaningful employment. There was really a loss here. And so we have to acknowledge that loss when we look at these plans. So this chart just shows really what the loss was over time. And maybe we'll go to the next slide to see how this was different. Right, this is a large, high-profile site, and so it could just be large-scale developers doing large-scale projects with a percentage of affordable. We're looking at it very differently. So the next slide shows that this process is really overlaying Black wealth, Black entrepreneurship, and Black contractors and developers. So looking at what those supply chains look like when they're integrated into a development and design for a process. So that was done before pen was put to paper, as Kayin said, before massing was done. We thought about what wealth building looks like and what the tools are. So if we go to the next slide, we have 7 categories. Of course, there are many more, but if we sort of like distill them down to how one gets agency, builds wealth, and generates income over time for their family, and to also create intergenerational wealth, which was something that this neighborhood lost with the destruction of so many structures. We have these 7 principles of wealth building that overlaid to how the design was formulated. So they include home ownership, right, which is the American way of building wealth, the pathway to wealth, but not always open to everybody. So overlaid with that is employment. It's existing business development, it's entrepreneurship, it's spurring new businesses, but it's also ownership interest. So how can somebody have a piece of a project? And that not only generates wealth, as Warren Buffett would say, while they sleep, not just when they work, but it also gives them a say in what's being built. It gives them an ownership stake as well as the potential for building wealth and income. And that, of course, has to be overlaid with community resources. And so that you'll see when you see the hubs that are created in the design plan. So if we go to the next slide, I think maybe I'll turn this over to Cleo to talk about how we formulated these sort of wealth building people and how they would benefit from wealth building. And some of these people are people you might recognize, or scenarios you might recognize, because they came out of our workshops. Or I could keep going, Cleo, either way.
I think if you take this first one, he'll take the next one.
Okay. Well, can we go back one slide very quickly? So they're just all sorts of people that could benefit from various kinds of development and various kinds of wealth building. So we looked along the age spectrum, along the spectrum of different kinds of education and family composition. So the first example that we'll show you is Darius. So thinking about somebody that maybe wouldn't have access to a development like this and how that happens, right? This is a minimum 20-year build out. So what does that look like? What does somebody's career trajectory, wealth building capability look like over that kind of trajectory? It might start in a trades program, but if we create the right kinds of development at the right scale, that person has a say when it gets done and then grows with the scale of the development. So that's what we're really looking at. Is it like over the scale and over the course of time, what does that look like over time? So Darius was the notion of what if somebody wanted to be involved in the construction of this development. The next slide shows another scenario with Mr. Williams, an older gentleman, and how he might benefit.
Can I jump in there real quick?
Yeah.
Mark? So just generally speaking, what we were really looking at doing here is taking real life scenarios and situations from the community. And when we compiled that information of what the needs were, what the wants, what the goals, and what the community's future vision is, then we began to put these narratives together. And those narratives helped us to also look at everything that we just covered previously, everything from economics to governance and what it would take to get there. So this is, these are the actual scenarios that we're looking at now to look at that process of moving forward and developing this piece of land.
So I don't know that we have to go through every single one because we don't have a lot of time, but if we sort of click through, you can see what is the difference when you're looking at somebody that might be in a 15-story tower versus a townhouse, right? What it might look like if somebody's starting a business or moving a business to the neighborhood. What it might look like for a preteen growing up during the phase of this in the early phases of the development and what it looks like at build out, and where is that person along that trajectory. So these stories are really to show a breadth of scenarios, and they came out of the workshops. They came from real people talking to us about real aspirations for their lives, and you'll see that reflected in the way the plan laid out as we started the design process. And so I think we probably have links to these so that you could see them, at your leisure. But we really wanted to get a breadth of people and how they might benefit. So just one last thing on, for example, ownership interest. What if somebody has a tie to this neighborhood but doesn't want to live there? They have a house, they have, a way of being in the world, but they could benefit from the development. They can still benefit from the development. They can still invest in this development. They can still grow with this development. So these different narratives really talk about people, not just in the neighborhood, but how the Black community generally could benefit from the ways in which a plan is formulated.
So then as we started drawing, you saw in the community connections portion, we began drawing after the 4th series of workshops, but over the course of the workshops, we collected everything we heard, and you saw how it was shared in a variety of Post-it notes and drawings over the course of the community connections. And we used this slide as a way to continue to test the design process that we are including everything, and included this slide ultimately in the majority of the workshops along the way. We organized everything we heard into various types of places and various experiences. So this slide is the overall summary of the types of place that we heard along the way. And the color coding that you see here will be reflected in the land use and the public realm diagrams that are coming soon. And then we made sure that along the way that the various experiences that were shared with us, the qualitative aspects of what the community has asked for remains in the forefront as well, so that we didn't lose those qualitative experiences when we started implying architecture and open space, and that it's these qualitative experiences that really will give Lower Albina that sense of place and the sense of pride for the community.
So the first time we really drew was trying to figure out how to give shape to a program that would support all of those different community ideas and places. And we came up with 4 kind of building blocks of the place. And probably the most important one is this idea of the hub. And the hubs are places that are really community anchors, community centers. They would house a lot of the different support services that would make entrepreneurs or youth successful throughout the years in the neighborhood. So we came up with 4 different types of hubs: food, arts, wellness, and then education. And you'll see how those play out across the plan. Another building block is this idea of a whole range and different types of public spaces, and making sure that people really felt like they were living in nature. And then finally, understanding that we need places for people to come back and live, thinking about the different components of what that could be, housing, that was a whole different range of types, as well as commercial spaces, places where a lot of jobs could exist, where people could start up small businesses. So we needed the whole range of those different commercial and entrepreneurial spaces as well.
Our next step was to start to evaluate different neighborhood possibilities and to weave back in kind of the wealth building strategies along with kind of these drawings that we had started that really kind of document the experiences desired in the neighborhood. So what we looked at, rather than looking at densities from strictly kind of a formal evaluation of urban design or planning, we evaluated the trade-offs in terms of wealth building. So for example, for low density, which is Mark mentioned sort of the American dream of home ownership, that might build wealth through kind of a small contractor's ability to construct smaller structures. but it would allow fewer ownership opportunities and fewer to benefit from the Black community with wealth creation. And then we started looking at medium density and high density and different models there, and evaluated through a series of metrics. And really kind of the thesis of the project that you'll see is wealth building. We lead with wealth creation, we lead with people's stories around that, and we continue to benchmark different possibilities and scenarios up against the kinds of wealth opportunities that are available. If we go to the next slide. One of the things we talked a lot about with this site is, as complex it is and as challenging as it is, one of the nice things about the site is it offers a lot of opportunity for kind of diverse strategies. So one thing we were able to talk about with the community is it wasn't an either or choice. There were probably parts of the site that were appropriate for low to medium density, while other parts that were appropriate for high density. So we go to the next slide. And this is exactly what we started to discuss, where that we were actually in control together of these toggles. And so we talked openly about different parts of the site and where different neighborhood possibilities made the most sense, knowing that all the time we were sort of adjusting these toggles of wealth creation potential with each choice we made. So we made these choices, these choices together. Next slide. This led to the beginning of a plan that first of all synthesized a lot of these wealth building criteria and evaluations of the potential. And if we go through the next two slides, I wanted to sort of talk about how we built this kind of site plan organization. So the first thing I think Brie had mentioned and Sean had mentioned, this idea of these hubs. And this was benchmarked off of a project from fellow Meadows, who was on the team, who had developed a hub like this in North Omaha. And it was a mashup of incredible community services, entrepreneurship, adult education, child education. There were academic partnerships with local universities and colleges. There was urban aquaponics, urban agriculture. There was a soul food restaurant. There was an event space. This hub really served as an inspiration for us to think about a network of hubs that focused on education, entrepreneurship, food, health and wellness, and art. And this network, in fact, created kind of a soulful spine that connected kind of neighborhood identity, and in each case was deeply rooted in the needs and also the expression of Lower Albina. So next slide.
And then the other piece that's sort of a part of the framework of the overall neighborhood is the public realm, is the open space. And you can see really clearly kind of staking out the idea of reclaiming the waterfront. We heard over and over that people were interested in kind of in views, in being within nature, but also places that were vibrant and collective. And so tried to think about this kind of band of open space along the waterfront that could transition from more natural, more quiet, more related to a neighborhood to the north, down to something that was more communal, a place of celebration, tied into the hubs, the food hub and the art hub south of Broadway, and that could really take advantage of great views to downtown, great views to the bridges, and have some events and gathering places. And then to the north, kind of the first neighborhood that would develop is an area that is really, we'll talk a little bit about scale and density as we get further and perhaps in questions, because this was one of the more unique areas to think about, but a place that would really be centered on that education hub. So emphasizing the idea that you're really living close to and connected to schools and to learning, but a place that also could have a whole range of different housing types that connected to the wealth generation strategies, and that also enabled families to live together, people of all ages, multi-generational housing, and all sorts of different access points.
We recognize that along we've been calling it the Broadway Gateway. So as you kind of land from the Broadway Bridge into Lower Albina, we used higher density models to create the sense of framing arrival and a gateway into the community, both from the neighborhoods to the east and also from the bridge itself. So these kind of typologies would you see these as more kind of residential, dense residential over commercial uses, but along the Broadway Gateway itself, a really strong emphasis on local businesses. We heard a lot in the workshops about the need to kind of reestablish kind of small local Black entrepreneurship in a centralized place, so that feeling of kind of extended family and a network of entrepreneurs working together helped one another. So next slide. And we also realized that because of the complexity of the site and because of we've been calling it sort of the arenas to the south, there were different kinds of opportunities and different kinds of urban edges. So there are the urban edges that focus on local retail towards Broadway, but then we thought of other different kinds of retail and commercial wealth creation opportunities facing south that leverage and capitalize on a higher volume of people coming and going for events. Of course, there's the Albina Gateway that faces out to the riverfront, and we saw this as an opportunity for the neighborhood to really express itself kind of at a city scale. And then also the kind of neighborhood edges and the sensitive kind of fine grain urban fabric that define great city neighborhoods, and kind of really focusing a lot on the sense of porches and shared green space within these kinds of communities. Next slide. And so, as this sort of unfolded into 3 dimensions, we started thinking about a time-based scenario that was sleeved into the kind of wealth creation scenario. So if you go back and look at some of those personal stories that we shared earlier, those stories happen over time. And a development like this, we know it happens over time too. So we're in the process of the planning phase right now. If we go to the next slide. We're calling the first phase the catalyst phase, and it really kind of focuses in and around where the Portland Public School building is today. We've imagined this as being almost kind of like a eco-focused community that has shared gardens and green space, that there's medium density housing, that's family centric, and as Brie mentioned, a very wide variety of housing opportunities. And you can see the educational entrepreneur hub formally starting to kind of step up in scale, leading into kind of a greater density along Broadway. Next slide.
And here we see that waterfront kind of take shape, a little bit building around the neighborhood. You can see how that event space kind of south of the Arts Hub would really engage the architecture of that building, but also take advantage of the river, and how some of those other spaces can really offer kind of a gradient and a real range of different uses. I love this view too, looking over the close-knit neighborhood, because you can see how you create these little different sub-neighborhoods within. And we've imagined that some of those backyards could be private backyards, but that they could also be kind of small group areas too. So you could have a couple of shared areas grouped together that could offer different types of shared spaces that are still semi-private.
We talked about the density along the Broadway Gateway. And here we also get the opportunity to introduce 2 more hubs, the Wellness Hub and the Food Hub. And the Wellness Hub has a special relationship with the green space across the street, where we are thinking it could be neighborhood-centric and quieter uses like urban agriculture, greenhouses, and urban gardens. The Food Hub is a celebration of Black cuisine, and we imagine this could be an incubator for Black F&B businesses, as well as a great destination citywide for everyone to come and kind of see who the hot new emerging chef might be. And you kind of see the network of hubs really taking shape in this phase. I'll also point to the I-5 cap, where we know that there's aspiration to cap I-5 to create greater connection to the east and to the north, and the neighborhoods and the connectivity, continuity of connectivity of these neighborhoods to Lower Albina. And right now, we're kind of leaving that open. We know that that design and engineering is still underway, but we imagine it also being a mix potentially of commercial, residential. Next slide. And you can kind of see how we're using density in this case to kind of step up towards really kind of framing a kind of beautiful new streetscape. And we've talked about narrowing the street, giving more room to sidewalks along Broadway and cafes, and celebrating the food hub as a primary point of arrival. Next slide. And so the final full vision reimagines some of the parcels to the south, perhaps another sports-based hub that's also a hybrid parking garage to the Moda Center that complements a new parking garage we had proposed to the north that replaces current parking, not highest and best use facing Broadway. So again, the full vision imagines appropriate kind of adjacencies with densities in the right places and a blend of wealth creation opportunities. Next slide. We need to update these numbers. I think they're even higher for the residential, but at one point we were approaching about 2,500 new residential dwellings, a mix between higher density apartment units to kind of mid-density apartments and potential kind of ownership condos and also townhomes. 260,000 square feet of commercial, and then various sizes of the hubs that kind of serve to culturally activate the neighborhood. Next slide. Kayin, maybe you want to jump in.
Yeah, so circling back to the community connections and those cultural connections, this is an example of some possible naming conventions. These are definitely just placeholder names, but it really pulled the community back into looking at who heroes are, who people of importance within the community are that need to be highlighted or people would want to have highlighted in such a way throughout this newer development. Next slide. And then finally, we're looking at the monuments, and the monuments are a series of 6 monuments throughout the area. So you have one highlighting the rivers, one highlighting knowledge within the community, a Broadway gateway entrances, that would be on either side of Broadway to the area, a cap monument, really dedicated more so to the history and how the community has survived and thrived throughout all of the destruction and divestment. Central Plaza Monument, more geared towards the residential area and people being able to really sit and relax and enjoy. And then finally, a skyline monument. One of the things that we heard throughout the workshops and was a very poignant thing was the question, where is my $1 million view? And so we wanted to make sure that within this, it was accessible to all of the community, and that as we get into the high rises, it's not about somebody's personal economics, but that it is really more of a egalitarian system.
Yeah, in addition to that, the monuments are not only there to share and for folks to enjoy the rich history, but also to connect with economic development, with cultural tourism, and be like a hub unto itself when it comes to development, growth, and economics.
So I think this is a good place to stop. We'd love to just have a follow-up conversation with everyone now, but certainly has been an incredible process, and as much as we've functioned really well together as a team, we feel the kind of the stakeholders and participants from the neighborhood has been the kind of most important team member along the way. So maybe we can open it up for conversation.
Sure. Thank you, Josh. It's David again. Fantastic presentation. Like Bob said in the chat, the diagramming and the visuals are very easy to follow and very exciting to pick up on. Not the least of which is the opportunity for a gateway there at Broadway. I see that so clearly. We usually pick up questions from the chat box. I know I threw something in there And Brian, I don't know if you've been sort of looking down through them.
No, David, your question is the only official question that I've sort of got copied over.
Okay, well, I can just go ahead and tell you what I was thinking there. I actually received a physical flyer about what was called Hybrid Solution 3 for lids on I-5. And I thought it was really timely because I knew we were going to see you all today. And so I was asking, is this something that's officially endorsed? I see it's near, obviously tremendously impactful to what you're doing. But Zari or whomever, Winta, can someone give us a sense of the two or the difference between the two, endorsements or not?
Sure. So the flyers, I believe, were sent out by ODOT, but this Hybrid 3 was the design consensus that was reached and agreed upon by ABT, Metro, the city, and then a number of other stakeholders that ODOT had convened. So it is the consensus path. We think it's great and is the one that has been incorporated into the design that you saw in the presentation. So this next phase of advocacy for us is really making sure that that's what's delivered. But we're happy with that option. Jerry, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't. But the only thing I want to say is that as a result of the work of AVT, last year, ODOT re-engaged and hired ZGF and a new set of consultants to look at this. And we were thrilled with the work that all the various options that they came up with, and that the actual Black community and community in general had an opportunity to look at them and come up with the consensus view. So what we've learned is that we always need to be vigilant to make sure that what's agreed upon and what's being promised is delivered. And one aspect of our project, which is very important, hopefully in another, in the future meeting we will describe to you, is that we want the governance. We want an entity to be in place to make sure that this vision is realized the way the community wanted it. And the same goes with the ODOT work. We will be vigilant in terms of making sure that what's been agreed upon will be included as part of their project.
Thank you, Zari. That's wonderful. And you actually touched upon the next question, which you may or may not have seen from Brian Martin, asking how does the governance actually work? And I know that we didn't have time to get to that portion of the presentation. So if you could maybe just briefly summarize a little bit, or let us know where we can access this presentation so folks can peruse it on their own if that's available, that would be great.
Right. In general, as you know, the way this kind of development has happened in the city is through partnership between City of Portland and developers. And we realize that this project is going to require more than just private and public. It needs to be really more comprehensive. And we have also been, the consultant team has been studying various organizations throughout the country, and also considering the various state laws and statutes. So we have come up with a series of options that we have not firmed up yet, but hoping that in conversation with the city and Metro we would. But in essence, we want an organization that is like ours, or a modification of ours, be given authority to really implement this plan. So I leave it at that because it's very complex and we're still working on it. And we will come back to you when we have all the information.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions yet. If anyone has any additional questions, please drop them in the chat box, and we'll get those asked in the last 6 minutes that we have together.
Yeah. In the
so
meanwhile,
I want to add one more thing. As we will be reviewing this process, this project, and the outcome with various city planning and sustainability commission, design commissions, Prosper Portland, various bureau directors. And we always are looking for feedback and constructive ways that we could improve what we have. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We have an organization, we have a website. Don't limit your engagement just to these presentations. We welcome any suggestions, offer, comments, and support that you could give us, because we do definitely need community support to push this forward.
Absolutely. Zari, I was just going to add that I wanted to applaud your entire team for the thoroughness of the public outreach and the community outreach that was a part of your programming and a part of the thinking, which eventually leads to design. But having done that a lot in my career, understanding the challenge it can be to get as many people in the room as possible, to have the patience and the discipline to go through so many iterations before maybe even pen hits paper. That's all strong medicine in my mind. And your presentation makes it very, very clear how well that was done by the entire team. So thanks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I applaud the approach the team took. And they're very talented, and they come from different backgrounds. So it was really good. And there was a good chemistry between the team members that I hope it shows.
I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about the community. I'm Janet. I've been the project manager on behalf of Albina Vision Trust. And on the community engagement, we scrolled through that pretty quickly. But one of the things, there was some advantages of being online. And one of them is that anybody could show up. So we did not have an advisory committee that was set up as an authority that all decisions had to be run through. Basically, it was a direct connection between the designers and the design team members, the economists and artists, and whoever showed up on the call. And so I just wanted to highlight that for you all. It was a little nervous making for those of us who are used to having a specific repeated advisory committee, but I think the lack of an authority gave people voice in a special way. And I think it empowered the design team to really be responsible to those comments from the community. So if anybody has any questions on that, we could talk about that. But we didn't see the same people on the calls all the time. We had a core group of repeat people, and we saw different people. I think overall we touched about 500 people with this process. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Janet. I have an anonymous question that came through. It's more of a design question. How are the edges of the district being considered so that they blend into existing neighborhoods to the north and preserve existing Black communities?
Well, ironically, one of the key pivot points for that question reside in the design of the caps, and that's the kind of a missing piece of the puzzle right now, because the I-5 cap really does kind of firmly connect our Williams and Vancouver alignment, as well as kind of the whole district sort of chokes down right there, moving east because of the construction of the interstate and the Moda Center. So I think a thoughtful resolution on what actually resides on those caps and how that's governed will go a long way to really cement those relationships. I mean, interestingly, directly north, kind of where the Portland Public School site is, it kind of bleeds into kind of large expanses of parking lot and light industrial, and there's a pretty significant topography shift right there. So that's probably less of an edge that is to be blended and more kind of contained. Certainly the edges are really thoughtful to the waterfront and access to the waterfront. And we touched on the edges kind of facing the arenas and different kind of wealth creation. So maybe that's an exciting deferred question in a way that kind of to complete that vision for the I-5 cap would be to fully kind of take that that level of rigor and thoughtfulness into account of how that should lead the way, right? Like how do you blend to the east and to the north, and both invite and encourage you know the pedestrian flow and the cycling flow and kind of the neighborhood flow from you know from Lower Albina to the connectivity it used to have with the neighborhoods before the interstate was constructed.
And one more thing on that too, we heard a lot in the early engagement conversations about Dawson Park and how that was a really meaningful community anchor to the north. And so that was something we thought about a lot as sort of like a magnet or something that needed to be thoughtfully connected to. And then a little bit further afield, I know that Kayin and Cleo were often thinking about how do you connect in terms of opportunity and then also program to people who are in the East County and create places like the hubs or like some of the more, the bigger open space and public realm spaces where you could have events that would welcome those folks in, and they could feel like even if they didn't live here, even if they didn't you know, come home at night to sleep in this Lower Albina neighborhood, that they were a part of the community. So kind of those two things blurred the boundaries a little bit.
I also want to add that the consultant team in the beginning were given specific instructions not to engage on development options for over the freeways, because we were in the midst of these very, very contentious conversations with ODOT, and we just didn't want the consultant team to fall into that rabbit hole. So that's why you see just dashed lines and some of these questions.
Interesting. Then in a way that, yeah, that allows everyone to focus, and your work is really thoughtful and evident. I have one last quick question. We've hit the 1 o'clock hour, and it's in regarding the economic side of things. In my career, I've been involved in real estate redevelopment, urban redevelopment with community development partners and developers, people of color, and I'm wondering if we know folks like that. Who do we connect? How do we connect those folks with you folks? Who's the right contact? Where do we start with that?
I think Winta is the all-around right contact for making
person.
Connections. Absolutely.
Well,
We did have. I mean, on that note, though, I think it's worth mentioning. Not only was the outreach really thorough with kind of neighborhood constituents and stakeholders, we also the Albina Vision Trust gave the entire team, Cleo and Kayin and Mark and Mike and Othello and teams at Eldorado and agency, access to an advisory panel with developers from both in the community, outside the community, that had you know a good diversity of both color and also kind of size and scale of development capacities. And we were able to kind of spend time with the development panel or advisory group as a whole, but then we had all of these kind of smaller breakout sessions where we talked kind of one-on-one and spent, you know, hour and a half work sessions with individual developers, gaining perspective of how these opportunities might really hit the market, and what kinds of development models actually were suitable for different types of developer capabilities, capacities, and how the hubs could actually help developers and contractors build capacity to do greater greater scale. So it was a great kind of feedback loop with the development community, both within Portland and then outside of Portland as well.
Thank you for sharing your email in the chat, Winta.
Yes, thank you. I think there's an Ann and Dita has a question there. It's pretty detailed at this point, and I think it's an important question about which was addressed mostly by Zari in terms of sort of how do you govern or keep an eye on things going forward from here. And I think we can all trust that that's going to be well formed given time. This is a lot of great work right now. Unfortunately, what happens is at 1 o'clock, we begin to have a big drop off and everyone runs away to do the other things in their busy day. And we'd love to keep going here for another hour. It's a little bit after 1. Zari, Winta, Janet, anybody on the team there, Mark, Kayin, and Cleo, if there's any last points that you wanted to make, we're going to wrap it up for this design panel.
Well, we just want to say thank you for giving us an opportunity to come to you, and we will be asking you again. And when we need help, we are not going to be shy. We're going to ask you for help. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this panel has had the honor to write letters of endorsement and other letters of opinion to diverse councils and review panels in the city of Portland. So we're always available on that, aside from this monthly urban design panel. With that, on behalf of the executive committee today, and thank you so much, Albina Vision Trust, for this presentation and for the great work that you're doing. I'm sure we're all excited. Great to hear it. Didn't have enough time, but we do have a recording that will be posted. Just ping Adrienne Morris at AIA. Her email is in the chat there, and she can get you the link to it. With that,
Thank you.
I say thank you, everyone. Have a great
You
day.
all.
See you
Bye-bye.
next month.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.